the zone, and we have a lot to get to, but just a little bit of time to do it in. We're going to try to make this the most informative and probably one of the shortest podcasts I've done in quite some time, as we take a look at some college football, as things are starting to ramp up in college football. There were some massive upsets over the weekend. None bigger than Vanderbilt knocking off Alabama. I mean, that is not supposed to happen. But we also want to take a look at Heisman Trophy candidates, because Ashton Genty and Jalen Milroe are in Joel Klatt's updated Heisman top 5 candidates. And what I want to do is I want to take a look at. Sorry about that. I want to take a look at his top 5, but I also want to take a look at, if I can get all this noise in the background taken care of, I also want to look at some other things as well, too, as Colorado. Y'all remember that team from last year and the team that's at 4-1 this year? You know, similar start, 4-1 start last year. And then they fizzled out. Sanders reminds team not to be surprised by 4-1 start as Colorado prepares for number 18 Kansas State. Some coaches might downplay a 4-1 start, not Deion Sanders. Colorado's coach took time this week to remind his players of just how well they're playing and not to be surprised by it. Some coaches also might mute the outside noise. Again, not Sanders. He hears everything, which was a bit negative early on in the season, but is now much more favorable. He's taking it all in stride, or trying to anyway. As quick as they jump on, they can jump off. As quick as they support, they try to dismantle. As quick as they love, they could hate, Sanders said Tuesday as his team returned from a bye week and prepares to host number 18 Kansas State 4-1, 1-1 in the Big 12 this weekend. I really don't get into that. I definitely know who said what for my purposes. He's taking a note of this. Colorado 4-1, 2-0 is on a 3-game winning streak that has it contending for a Big 12 title. His message to the team is, don't let the success be a surprise. How can you be surprised that you're winning in life? Sanders said. How can you be surprised with the expectations you have for yourself? The only way you can be surprised is if you didn't expect it. Sanders certainly expected it. He just wishes he could have a mulligan for a 28-10 loss at Nebraska on September 7th. Some of us are still upset about the Nebraska game, Sanders said, because we felt like we weren't where we are then, where we are right now. When we practice like we do, prepare like we do, we expect the results. The Buffaloes have a big test this weekend against the Wildcats and their explosive offense led by quarterback Avery Johnson. Colorado's defense will be at full strength with safety Shiloh Sanders returning from a forearm injury. He's wearing a rubber cast. Since Shiloh, coach's older son, went out against Nebraska, the team has knocked off Colorado State, Baylor, and Central Florida. Deion Sanders' advice to his squad, just keep grinding. I don't want them to be lackadaisical, thinking this is easy, because a win don't care who attains it, Sanders said. It has no mind, no memory, no whatsoever. It does not care, so it might as well be us if it has no care and no feelings. Sanders got a ringing endorsement Tuesday from athletic director Rick George, who likes what he sees from attendance. 2 straight years of selling out season tickets, games appearing on major networks, and the product on the field. We hope that Coach Prime finishes his career here, George said. He can do significant things for his long term with longevity. He and I are on the same page about where we want this program to go. For the record, Sanders has no animosity toward Kansas State running back Dylan Edwards, who left Boulder last season. Sanders roots for Edwards, just not Saturday. Everybody who leaves here in the right manner, as well as just leaves, period, I want them to be successful, Sanders said. I just hate when guys make those decisions and they leave and they shoot back at us. So I thank him for not being that guy. He has some great moments, and he's going to have many more great moments. The baseball playoffs had Sanders reminiscing about attending Kansas City Royals spring training games in Fort Myers, Florida as a kid. A fan of George Brett, Amos Otis, and a host of others, Sanders would to skip school in an effort to outrace everyone for home run balls. Then he sell them. That was my hustle, Sanders cracked. I used to always make sure I brought the teacher my best ball. Sanders was drafted by the Royals in the 6th round of high school. It was the advice of the late Dick Hauser that helped shape the course of his career. He was the one that said, I hear you're a pretty good football player. I would go to college and we'll draft you again, Sanders recounted. That's why I went and played football, because they offered me a substantial amount of money. He found success on both fields. He became a Pro Football Hall of Fame member as an elite cornerback, receiver, and returner, and he played 9 major league seasons. Just don't compare him to Travis Hunter, the Buffalo's two-way standout who's worked himself into Heisman contention. It's not me against Travis, Sanders said. It's his turn now. I want him to have all the accolades, all the praise, all the love, all the attention, all the focus that he desires. Same with his team. We're happy where we are, Sanders said, but we're a long way from where we want to be. Now what I'm going to do, I am going to take a look at the Big Ten Power rankings. As Ohio State and Oregon set up huge showdown. Entering week 6, there were 4 Big Ten teams who needed to handle their business against overmatched opponents to set up a pair of new age conference showdowns for the ages on October 12th, a pivotal day on the college football calendar. Number 3, Ohio State needs to dispose of Iowa, which it did with relative ease in a 35-7 victory that wasn't as close as the final score indicated. You call that close? Number 6, Oregon needed to brush aside Michigan State, which it did fairly comfortably in a 31-10 win on Friday night. Now, those 2 undefeated programs will face off on Saturday night in one of the most highly anticipated games of the season that could foreshadow the league's championship game later this fall. So, what I am going to do before I get off into these power rankings, I am going to take a break, and when I come back, I will give you the rest of the power rankings. Like I said, this will be a short podcast due to time constraints, but I'm going to give you the best in the little time that I can. So you're locked in the zone. Like I said, before there was a In the Zone on the radio, you already had In the Zone, the podcast. The original, the OG In the Zone. Yours truly, Anthony Smith. I'll be right back. Welcome back to In the Zone with yours truly, Anthony Smith. It is Wednesday, midweek, right after the lunchtime hour, Central Time Zone, that is. Not Eastern, not Pacific, but Central. Because if you ever notice, sometimes when they give like the start of these games, they always say Mountain, Pacific time, Eastern, but they very rarely say Central Standard Time. I don't know why come we always get what's what I'm looking for? Why does Central Time Zone get discriminated against? Anyway, so much for that. Make you laugh a little bit. So going into that break, and we was talking about the Big Ten and their power rankings. So number 3, Ohio State. Number 6, Oregon. Anyway, number 7, Penn State needed to stiff arm and undermanned UCLA, which it did, with a smothering defensive effort in a 27-11 victory. Number 11, USC needed to out-tough Minnesota, which it failed to do during a stunning 24-17 defeat in Minneapolis. Now, the Trojans must regroup and refocus before welcoming the Nittany Lions to Los Angeles on Saturday afternoon. Suffering a third conference loss before mid-October would all but end USC's hopes of reaching the college football playoffs. Playoffs? Playoffs? I just want to win a game. You talking about playoffs? Thank you, Coach. Elsewhere, undefeated Indiana continued its unfathomable climb up the rankings, while the defending national champions from Michigan were upended in a raucous atmosphere at Washington. Nebraska outlasted Rutgers in a battle of upstart programs, and Purdue, well, it's almost basketball season for the Boilermakers. Hate to say it like this, but I guess you can pretty much say the same thing for Kansas Jayhawks, who has so much high hopes and expectations. But I know we're talking about the Big Ten, but, that just made my mind think back to KU's old mantra, wait to basketball season. So here's a fresh batch Big Ten power rankings following week 6. Number 1, Ohio State 5-0 overall, 2-0 in the Big Ten. Result, a 35-7 home win over Iowa. The Buckeyes built a 35-0 lead before Iowa finally reached the end zone with 8:07 remaining in the fourth quarter, by which point Ohio State had pulled its starters and was content with coasting toward an easy win. A sterling defensive performance limited Hawkeyes quarterback Cade McNamara, who beat Ohio State when he was at Michigan in 2021, to fewer than 100 passing yards and forced him to commit 3 turnovers, 2 fumbles, 1 interception, while also tallying 4 sacks. The wide receiver duo of Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka combined to make 13 catches for 160 yards and 4 touchdowns, as quarterback Will Howard completed 21 of 25 passes for 209 yards and produced 5 total scores. A balanced offensive outing from the Buckeyes featured a near 50-50 split between the aerial attack, led by Howard, and the ground attack, 203 yards, in which tailbacks Quinshawn Judkins and Travion Henderson both averaged at least 5.5 yards per carry. Ohio State travels to Oregon later this week for what might be its most difficult game of the season. Number 2, Oregon, 5-0 overall, 2-0 in the Big Ten. Results, a 31-10 home win over Michigan State. The Ducks leapfrog Penn State for the number 2 spot in the Big Ten power rankings. After another comprehensive victory over a Big Ten foe, Oregon's defense has now limited 4 of its 5 opponents to 14 points or fewer this season, and ranks 21st nationally in scoring defense at 17 points per game. The only team to exceed 14 points against the Ducks was Boise State, which continues to blossom into one of the best offenses in the country behind tailback Ashton Jeanty, a legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate who has already surpassed 1,000 rushing yards this season. Wow. Oregon's own running back, Jordan James, enjoyed his best outing of the year against the Spartans by carrying 24 times for his season-high 166 yards and a score in his second straight 100-yard effort. James's effectiveness was a major reason why the Ducks converted 8 14 times on third and fourth down combined as they stayed ahead of the chains throughout the game. Quarterback Dylan Gabriel chipped in with 3 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 1 rushing, though he did toss a pair of red zone interceptions. Number 3, Penn State 5-0, 2-0 Big Ten. Result, a 27-11 home win over UCLA. This was a game the Nittany Lions defense would have expected to dominate as a struggling UCLA team traveled thousands of miles without the service of its starting quarterback, starting center, and leading receiver, and that's exactly what defensive coordinator Tom Allen's unit did. A Penn State front seven sliced into the Bruins' backfield time and time again on Saturday to the tune of 7 tackles for loss and 2 sacks, limiting the run-heavy Bruins to just 93 rushing yards on 29 attempts, 3.2 yards per carry, and the secondary anchored by safeties Zakee Wheatley and Jalen Reed limited starting quarterback Justin Martin, a former 4-star recruit, to a series of swing passes and checkdowns. Wideout Logan Loya was the only UCLA receiver to catch a pass longer than 12 yards. Penn State's own offense was limited by the absence of starting tailback Nicholas Singleton, who was in pads along the sideline but did not play. Backup rusher Katron Allen carried 21 times for 78 yards and a score. The Nittany Lions will travel to USC later this week. Number 4, Indiana, 6-0, 3-0 in the Big Ten. Result, a 41-24 road win over Northwestern. While it's true, the Hoosiers still haven't played anyone remotely close to a ranked opponent, a 6th blowout victory in as many weeks can't be ignored amid a conference rife with unpredictability beyond the top few teams. Indiana has now matched its best start to a season in program history by equaling the 1967, the year I was born, squad that also began 6-0 and did so by exceeding 40 points for a 5th consecutive game. Quarterback Curtis Rourke, formerly of Ohio, appears to be one of the best transfer portal additions of the offseason after posting his 2nd consecutive 300-yard game and 3rd of the season overall. This time completing 25 of 33 passes for 380 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. He now ranks 5th nationally and 1st in the Big Ten with 1,752 passing yards and is tied for 9th in the country with 14 passing touchdowns. After becoming the first team in the country to reach bowl eligibility, Indiana will enjoy a bye week before back-to-back home games against Nebraska and Washington, both of which are winnable for a team ranked 3rd nationally in scoring at more than 47 points per game. What I'm going to do, because of my time constraints, this is going to be the last one I give you, and I will finish up the Big Ten Power Rankings on tomorrow. Also, I'll be doing my A-Train Sports Talk podcast as we get ready for high school football and some KCAC football, so I want to get that out there. So, yeah, that's all right. You know me, I have 2 podcasts. This one here, I'm talking more on the national scene, NCAA, NFL, and whatnot. So, I just want to put that out there. That way, those of you who are listening to this will know what to look forward to tomorrow on the A-Train Sports Talk podcast. Also, like I said, I'm going to finish this one up tomorrow with the Big Ten Power Rankings, as well as give you some more college news as well and some NFL, as tomorrow is Thursday and we'll be getting you ready for some Thursday night football. Anyway, the last one I'm going to close out with is Nebraska at 5-1 overall, 2-1 in the Big Ten. Result, a 14-7 home win over Rutgers. Nebraska outlasted the Scarlet Knights on an afternoon when unusual weather conditions played a significant role in how the game unfolded. Swirling winds and a game-time temperature of 97 degrees, the hottest ever for an October kickoff at Memorial Stadium, produced a defensive battle in which the Cornhuskers never scored in the second half, and Rutgers didn't score until there were fewer than 5 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. Nebraska's defense only allowed 2 third-down conversions on 14 attempts and intercepted quarterback Ethan Calakmenis twice to maintain control of the game. True freshman quarterback Dylan Raiola endured his least effective outing of the season and only completed 13 of 27 passes for 134 yards, no touchdowns, and 1 interception. He was also sacked 4 times and finished with minus 32 rushing yards. The Cornhuskers traveled to number 18 Indiana this weekend for a critical game between programs on the rise. And that is all I have for you. But I hope it was the most informative 20 plus minutes that you have let your ears be in tune to. Once again, In the Zone with yours truly, Anthony Smith. It's been a pleasure for me to do this for you. Share this podcast with your friends. Let them know, hey, In the Zone is alive and doing well. Not In the Zone on the radio, but In the Zone on the podcast. I was here first. That's not throwing no shade at the guys on the radio. It's just that I was here first before they got there. Until the next time, take care of yourself and each other. God bless. I'm out.